Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the European VC podcast. Today, we are talking to Oliver Holle from SpeedInvest and Ekaterina Almasque from OpenOcean. You will very quickly, if you know a little bit about the players in venture, know that these are two very different players. Oliver, of course, is coming from SpeedInvest with a 500 million euro fund, investing broadly across the ecosystem with a generalist fund. But you have OpenOcean, who are on the other side of the spectrum. I think they're 150 million, if I'm not remembering incorrectly, and they're specialized in AI. So today we're going to dive all deep on AI, and we're going to do that based on these two perspectives, trying to see exactly how does a big player that are generalist think about AI, and how does a specialist like Ekaterina think about AI. So I hope you'll enjoy this conversation as much as I did making it.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.
This show is not investment advice, and the hosts of this episode may be invested in the funds and companies featured.
All right, welcome back to the European VC podcast. Today I have Oliver and Katja with us. Maybe just 2 seconds, tell us, how do you relate to AI, being, of course, SpeedInvest and OpenOcean? Oliver, maybe you go first.
So I oversee 6 investment teams within SpeedInvest, all focusing on different verticals, one of them being focused on deep tech and the infrastructure layer, so to say. Every single team has done multiple AI investments. It's a topic that you cannot avoid, no matter if you're a consumer, if you're in fintech, if you're in health, and of course, if you're in SaaS. So it's a massive theme that will not go away, and we all have to form our opinions around that. So it's super exciting to talk about this.
Yeah, it's obviously a horizontal, or is it, Katja?
It is horizontal, and it's a lot of things. But for me, so I'm looking at deep tech investments and fundamental technologies investments across Europe at OpenOcean as a general partner at OpenOcean. But also I'm an investor in AI since 2006, and I actually graduated in AI computer science in the 90s. So it's a long story, and I have seen all the up and downs of development. It was very interesting that AI came as a kind of, it became usable back in 2006. And this journey of high investment volumes in AI started in 2006 and accelerated recently. So, and now we are looking actually at the second wave of AI investments, and maybe we can talk today even about third and fourth waves coming.
Beautiful. 4 waves, and we're only on the second now, or okay, so that's going to be intense. So let me ask you the very first big question. Some split AI across the 4 different layers and think about it as such, and then they say, well, we only operate in the top 2 layers, the applications and so on. Or how do you think about it? How do you kind of split up AI in terms of where you play and where you choose not to play and where you think the biggest potential is? Could you talk a bit to that?
In our perspective, we try to think along also our teams and along our organization principles to make life easier. So there is obviously a huge opportunity around, let's say, AI core infrastructure. That means, of course, foundational models, and then a lot of adjacent or complementary questions that need to be solved. These fundamental additional questions can be around safety, can be around transparency, around actually performance questions, edge questions. So there's a lot of, so to say, topics on top of the foundational models. We as SpeedInvest have so far not invested in the foundational models. Why? Because we are afraid of the hardware and infrastructure component there, and the ability as a relatively small seed-focused VC to not get completely washed out over time. I think there's a high risk there, and so I think if you're lucky and you get into the pre-seed round of these companies, then it's fun to do it. But anything else doesn't make too much sense if you don't have the capital behind you to defend your position. That being said, there is a lot of opportunity in these adjacent and complementary questions that need to be solved. There's so much research going on at universities around those. And that's where we have seen multiple extremely exciting cases to invest in. Actually, we have with MindsDB, we have a great investment in the US together with Ekaterina, that would sit for me in that category. Yes, and then there's all those vertical applications of AI, and again we have 5 other teams, and all of them are super excited about the opportunities that they see there. And there, for me, AI is simply the next infrastructure to build upon, and there is just no way to not do it, not invest in it.
Where do you play on the 4 tech stack layers, so to say, Katja?
Well, actually, almost everywhere, but with a big but, right? So it's true that some of the plays in the AI are so capital intensive. It's like almost like building a nuclear power station. It requires so much capital that for a small VC firm, even for a growth VC firm, it's very hard to tap in. We are talking here about an OpenAI type of place, right? Where it's billions and billions invested. And probably if you were very early on, you could somehow enter this game, but not these days anymore. What is important for us is to find those opportunities where we think it's fundamentally changing, like it's disrupting in a certain way, but we also can generate enough revenue short-term and long-term. Yes, we can wait for some time, but there should be this kind of like predictable growth. And usually where we see the largest gaps today is actually in the whole enterprise stack. Like if you're an enterprise today sitting and trying to apply AI, actually you are in a very difficult situation because you don't have tools even in how to deal with your data efficiently, how to connect this data to AI tooling, how to control what AI is doing, all the compliance, all these things. There is very little tooling done, and even in talks with Google and other big tech players, they confirm the same issue. So we are facing here enterprises that are willing to take AI on, but they don't have the infrastructure for this. And this is, we think, it's a very sweet spot because this is where we can invest, create real difference, generate real value. And those companies are most prone to start scaling very fast. So this is kind of like one category, but the other category as well, there are some applications, let's say, that are super useful for enterprises where it's first AI and very disruptive AI models, and they scale super fast because they create a very easy way for enterprises to create something. And I'm talking about Gen AI in this case. So Gen AI is a big thing. Gen AI, by the way, is the second wave, right? So the first wave, we talk about the first wave was just introducing deep learning, and now we have Gen AI. And in Gen AI, we have companies like HeyGen or Colossian in Europe that actually allow you to generate videos very easily, and suddenly you can do marketing at much less cost, much faster. So they scale very fast. HeyGen is probably one of the fastest scaling companies in the AI space. I think they scaled to 35 million within a year or something like that. So it's an interesting space where you say, wow, this is really disruptive. The team is doing something great and actually is very useful for the enterprise.
I think there's an interesting question that I'm asking myself actually on the enterprise space, because you spoke about this now, is you have, of course, also the examples of Klarna that recently, where the CEO recently said that they're basically pushing out a lot of their SaaS application layer and are actually just working with AI and building their own applications based on that. So I think there's a huge business that is being made at the moment with a lot of system integrators, a lot of solution providers that sit on top or that work with existing APIs like OpenAI and others, Mistral, etc., and just do service work, solution work, and thereby solve the needs of those big enterprises. So maybe the focus is more on I wouldn't say SME only, but the giants probably will build a lot internally based on the core infrastructures. There's a sweet spot there that I think we all have to think carefully with to not get eaten up sooner or later by the combination of the big solution providers that make a huge killing at the moment with the buzzword of AI plus the OpenAIs of the world.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think it's a lot of, also, to be fair, a lot of companies, like even you take Okados of the world, right, and all building up some AI solutions. The question is, we have seen this before in other industries. At some point, it's just more efficient to switch to some platforms that provide it. And again, like, it's an emerging market. That's why we all here are guessing a lot, and we are only time probably, right? But we have all hypotheses, right? So we all have hypotheses.
50% would be a lot.
Exactly.
How do you both think about, because now the next big thing is, of course, agents. It's one thing that we've had, something that could give us good answers, that could help us dig through data. But the next big thing seems to be, can you actually make AI act on your behalf and act unsupervised almost, at least on its own, so that you might supervise, but you're not controlling it. Do you think that is where we're headed, or do you think that we're moving a bit too quick in terms of going from the first stage, we haven't really solved it yet, and now we're already talking about letting agents loose in the world? Is that pie in the sky thinkers moving a bit too quick because they're keeping the hype train moving quick? Or are we really, is that where you're seeing the next big thing? And if so, didn't many seed investors make investments just a year ago or two that are already becoming redundant or not relevant anymore because the next thing is really agents?
So I think you're hitting on a very interesting topic, because I think agents is the third wave, actually. Yeah. So if I, like, in my simplistic view of the world, and forgive me for that, please, but in my simplistic view of the world, agents are coming, and it will be an amazing disruptor for many, many automation plays that we have seen in the last 10, 15 years. Because, the last 10, 15 years was all about automation, simple automation of workflows in the enterprise. And now suddenly we have agents that can actually mimic action of some of their roles and functions in their organization. And you can even create super systems of agents acting on behalf and doing, like, even payments, to each other. You can think about all of this. And again, I think this is a great wave of that is coming. And you're right, there are some investments already. But again, what is missing yet is largely the infrastructure layer. So what is coming, again, that there is a huge opportunity to invest in orchestration, in management, in compliance, in making sure that there are no risks involved for human beings and so on. So this is all like AI safety, and also is coming as a big wave. And actually there are companies that start doing this, but I think they will become really, really large when this agents economy starts to really evolve.
Yeah, I would agree. I think overall in the whole AI space, it's such a obvious case of where a lot of people today want to invest in yesterday's term sheets. So you always have the lag, right? Everybody now wants to be part of a foundational model company, but the reality is, if you haven't invested 2 years or 3 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago into these companies, it's over. You have to invest in a new wave. So there is this risk of investors just being late to the game and thereby really losing out. I think that's very clear. With regards to agents, I'm personally a bit less worried, because for me this is ultimately extremely verticalized, and you need to be extremely close to the customer and to the actual problem that you're solving, and that will be ultimately for the best companies out there that build a vertical solution on the basis of AI. That core competence, that understanding of the customer, that understanding of the workflow will be the difference. And they will always, if they're good, they will always use the latest tech to optimize for that. So I would hope, if I look at our best companies there, that they will be just as fast as the new startup wave out there to implement agents or implement the next wave of tech. Again, as Ekaterina mentioned, I mean, here we have a couple of infrastructure topics to be solved still, or a couple of fundamental questions to be resolved.
I agree with this. So there will be an adoption wave, but I want to come back on this one foundation model and just bring maybe as a point of kind of discussion point. It was an interesting conversation I had with Greg at NEA, who was the CTO of Sun Microsystems. And he was like, well, the VCs are all pouring money into foundation models. It's all great, but what people oversee that is just a gate for more content. And I actually, it made me think, and he was comparing this to Explorer or like this Netscape versus Explorer war at the late 90s, where everyone was pouring money into development of how to access internet. But at the end of the day, this is not where the most value today is generated. So it's an interesting kind of thinking as well. We need to implement certain things, and yes, we need. I mean, it's great that Microsoft is baking OpenAI and things like that. But in reality, where we, for us, for venture capital, also enterprises, where the most value might come from, is not from these fundamental layers, but something else that will come on top of it.
For me, that's, if I'm honest about it, that's my fundamental belief. At least for us as European early stage investors, that's where we probably have to play. I think everything else is unrealistic, and there are such amazing opportunities. I mean, like speaking of content, the case where I've seen AI at work with extremely immediate monetary impact is a content company. Actually, it's called Inkit. It's a US company, but now it's originally out of Germany. They've been using AI to dramatically improve their workflows, dramatically improve their revenue base by just using different formats, audiobooks, multiple languages, multiple new formats, using, of course, also image and video creation based on the same core human content. And that was wonderful to see. And it's already out there. You can do it with existing APIs. You don't need to wait for agents or anything. So, and then their revenues exploded just by implementing these kind of existing solutions that are already out there. So that very much comes to your point of the content layer probably being a huge opportunity here.
My reflection on what you said, Katja, is yes, you can definitely liken it to the war for the explorer, but at the same time, we should not forget that in the end, a lot of the revenue for Google, as an example, comes from their domination with the Chrome browser and everything that plugs in to basically their search business. And as such, I don't think it's a matter of there not being created value. I think it's just a matter of the value already having been captured because the winners have been picked. And it's going to be very, very hard for anyone else to come in. And what then that means is that there's a lot of value also being created on top of explorers, obviously, in the internet, which is then what the rest of us are now searching for, so to say. I wanted to ask you on this search for the value, then on top of the foundational models, because you spoke a lot about enterprises, and I saw Mark Benioff of Salesforce speak at Dreamforce a bit more than a few days ago, and what he said very clearly was that so they are working on something, I think he called it Agent Force or something like that, and what he described was very much that AI is there. That's where they play today. That's where he spends all his time. And he's working tirelessly with customers on building models for them where the accuracy is super, super high. Because he says this accuracy, and that makes perfect sense, that this accuracy problem, meaning avoiding any form of, the models making up shit and the models making the wrong inferences and thus taking the wrong actions when it's an agent. That's where he's very much trying to solve. And what I'm thinking is that a lot of VCs are saying that the existing SaaS models and the SaaS giants are going to be disrupted. But what he says is that, well, we are the only ones with the infrastructure layer with our clients where we can make sure that the agents that are developed are actually functional because the accuracy is high enough to be able to go out and act in the world. He said he probably focused more on himself than the others, but by inference, you could realize that what he said was, well, startups are going to have huge accuracy problems for a long, long time because it's very, very hard to just plug into an existing business and take whatever they have and then have very high accuracy. How are you seeing your startup solve that? How are you thinking about that when you're looking at deals in this space? Because it does feel to me that putting something out in the world, acting, we're a far step away from being able to do that.
Yeah, I'll just jump with a few thoughts here. So Salesforce, by the way, is a very interesting case because actually they're building a very interesting vertical cloud, basically, comparable to many other tech players. So it's becoming really, in my view, and I might read it wrong, but in my view, Salesforce is becoming a tech player by itself, very similar to, Google of the world,
Yeah.
probably smaller scale, but the strategy is very much, and I admire the strategy, by the way, because I think there is indeed value in being able to control the stack. Coming back to your question, I think indeed what's the main problem with the foundation models today is that it's a black box in a way. Indeed, enterprises have hard time controlling input output in a way. Yes, there are certain ways doing this, but it forces enterprise to think about their proprietary model, and proprietary models force them to think about their proprietary data and other sources of data, and also how to actually do this with the lack of AI talent. So if you are like a general, if you're a general enterprise and you just need to build, top-notch, cutting-edge AI stack, how do you do this? And I just give you an example. It's from the past, but in the past, BMW was launching their first car with software inside. Okay, it was 2005. And you can think BMW is one of the best companies in Germany. What's the problem? But 1 month before launch, their car wasn't starting. Okay, so they came with this problem to the CTO of Siemens and said, you guys have this corporate technology with top-notch engineers from all around Germany. Can you solve our problem? And the target team was created to solve this problem. And it was solved with the top-notch engineers. But the lesson from this story is that even BMW couldn't get the best software engineers to write the great code in the first place. With AI, this problem actually is worse, okay, because AI is much more complex, and many, even top-notch companies, they just cannot hire these top-notch engineers. So the question is where we are investing. We say, well, our hypothesis is that not every enterprise, even the likes of Klarna, would be able to hire these very, very best AI engineers, but they have to solve very, very top-notch, cutting-edge AI problems. So how do they do this? They will go to AI startups that manage to get some best engineers and work on particular, very specific problems, but solve them the best in the world. And it can be any problem. It can be, for example, a problem, can I trust my model output? Yes, there is a startup or several startups looking at verifying that the output of the model, of the performing of the model, is what the enterprise was expecting, and nothing happened in between. And there is accurate output. And if it's not accurate, it tries to detect what happened. And example of the startups, for example, Lettuceflow in Switzerland, it's our portfolio company. There are a few that are similar in the US. There is one that is like Kera also, that has gained a lot of investment, but they moved into security more. But, there are startups trying to solve exactly this problem. And I think for each problem, there will be startups. And some of the startups will become platforms over time because they will be so successful in solving one problem, then the next problem, then the next problem, that with their AI aggregated engineering talent, they will be able to dominate certain verticals or horizontals. You take it. So this is our hypothesis when we invest. And I would be very, very interested to hear from Oliver how they see this space.
I fundamentally agree what you said. I think there is a clear picture that incumbents will benefit and will actually have a lot of value. A lot of value will go to them, right? This is different to the browser wars, because back then everybody started almost from zero, right? Maybe with Microsoft is a great example, but not starting from zero. But you will have, given the infrastructure investments that you, given the massive synergies that you have on data accuracy that you Andreas mentioned, it will be very, very hard to beat the giants that are out there today. I think that's very obvious already, and that means also to be very discerning and careful in picking startups. At the same time, just as you said, I think there are only going to be so many Klarnas of the world which have the talent, have the resources, and have the technical capabilities to solve that for themselves, and that will leave hundreds and thousands of customers out there that will not be able to do it. And I think that's where very focused, vertically startups with a clear value proposition to solve a specific problem can make a huge difference. Obviously, for us, for example, a big question that we ask ourselves, is this a mission critical question where AI is left alone to solve? Then we would be very careful. That can happen in the finance industry, that can happen in education, that can happen also, of course, in the medical sector. So that's an area that is super careful to invest in. there are a lot of other use cases. Let's stay in the content side, entertainment side, where a hiccup doesn't make a difference at the end of the day, right? And then there's the other use case where AI is not left alone, but is always in very close dialogue and control of humans. We see a lot of this happening in the medtech and biotech space, where AI is used, but it's always used very much within a certain workflow element of the whole value chain, where again, the risk of leaving these agents alone is not really there, at least the way they use AI these days. So these are the two key areas. Is it mission critical? To what degree is the AI embodied in the value chain? These two questions help a lot in addressing the question you mentioned, Andreas.
Now let me tee up some debate. Katja, you're an AI specialist. Your fund that's all you do. You've argued that AI presents a new business and scaling model that will require that VCs have to change. So my question to you is, can you tell us a bit about why you think that AI presents a challenge that makes it paramount or necessary for VCs to change how they think and operate? And then also maybe make the case for a vertical specialized player in this. And then I'll ask Oliver afterwards to respond to that and say, how do they do it inside SpeedInvest?
Perfect, Andreas. The only thing I will say, I wouldn't make a case for vertical VC, specialized VC on AI specifically, but I would argue more about general deep tech approach, because I think this is what we are talking about here. So indeed, AI represents a major kind of challenge for typical VC, let's say VC investment approach that worked in Europe for the last maybe, 15, 20 years, especially when B2B SaaS became the sweet spot of investment in Europe. So B2B SaaS, I would argue, and again, please tell me if I'm wrong, B2B SaaS, I would argue, is all about pattern recognition. Basically, you get a certain kind of early stage company, you recognize there are certain revenues, you think, wow, they're actually doing much better than other B2B SaaS, and we predict that it will grow a certain amount. Yes, we look at the market, but the market usually is there, and it's only a matter of time and putting resources into marketing and sales to scale this company. This is, maybe simplified. Again, I'm simplifying a lot today, so please don't judge me for this. In the AI space, it's an emerging market. It's what NVIDIA's founder Jensen was calling as a 0 billion market opportunity. We know already AI is there, but the market, to be honest, is not there yet. So we are creating the market. What does it mean? It means that customers don't really know yet how to use AI. And today is much better than it was in 2006, but still there is a lot of education involved. So when AI company comes early stage, they usually don't really have a product market fit at all. They don't have revenues. They are lucky if they have almost consulting projects where they are paid, which is called POC, proof of concept. And then for majority of VCs, this represents a major problem because you cannot invest in POC, you cannot invest in consulting, and who knows whether they will ever find product market fit. Okay, so whether they will be able. And this requires a very different thinking because it's not about pattern recognition, it's about belief. And this is where actually people who were in the industry for a long time and ideally have built things by themselves in the past, they say, well, I don't really know because I'm wrong 50% of the time in the best case scenario, but I sense there is something happening and I don't know yet how it will evolve and what the end solution will be. But I think it's a really interesting opportunity. And most probably the team who's working on it is really they have credibility that they can try doing this. And I can give you a few examples. It's not from the AI space, but think about Google itself, right? When Google started, and I remember that because I was standing with Sergey Brin in 2001 on the stage when he was telling that the future of search is, the future of the world is all connected data, but they didn't really have revenue model back then. For me, it was a surprise that I think they raised 25 million or were about to raise 25 million, but it was all on belief that they will be able to do something with the search. And they were not inventors of search itself, because everyone back then was talking about content-driven web. That there was like, there were European sponsored projects on this. No, but they did something and raise money, and then started to think, okay, we can monetize in a different way, completely different, not by selling search, right? And many companies in that space, in AI or deep tech in general, they start somewhere, but then transform something else. Think about NVIDIA, gaming, and sudden opportunity comes. Nobody could foresee. People can say, well, I know there is a bottleneck in compute, but nobody really knows how to evolve. Think about ARM, started in something, then mobile phones came, and suddenly ARM had a market. So, and these are the things that are super difficult to predict. And this is where risk appetite as a business model for VC is very different, I would argue, than risk appetite and B2B SaaS. And that it requires probably different breed of investors, different culture of thinking about investments. And I would argue some of the early VCs in the US were very good at this, or maybe they were just lucky and in the right place, but somehow we still need to bring this type of thinking and culture a lot more in Europe in order to build much more out of Europe in this space, whether it's AI, whether it's quantum, whether it's anything else. So this is my kind of thought of the day, and I'm leaving. So maybe I'm wrong 50% of my statements, but it's okay.
I cannot agree more. For me, this is was one of my deepest learning in the last couple of years. So when we started our deep tech practice, it was in 2009. Before that, we have done one or the other occasional deep tech deal, but it was really a bit of a random walk. We didn't know what we were doing. We then hired Rick, who I'm sure you know. He's a deep tech investor, and he built a deep tech team around him. And this team works extremely different than all the other teams in SpeedInvest. And it took us a while internally also to recognize that, and also to embrace it, and to accept it, and not try to measure these two cases in the same way. So as you said, and this is not just early stage, right? This also goes into Series A and Series B rounds, and that's where the European dilemma is even bigger, because we have a lot of early stage investors that are not deep tech investors, that are now trying to do deep tech, but don't understand exactly what you were saying, and don't have the background to do it.
Would you go so far as to say that the KPI based approach to investing in anything because now as AI is eating up the normal B2B SaaS, so to say, would you say that type of investing is almost dead, and you have to apply the mindset of a deep tech investor if you want to be successful?
No. I don't think that. I think there's really two worlds. There's two worlds. The one world is the SaaS, our cherished SaaS team, bread and butter business, also in the marketplace, a consumer team and the health team. And there, the vast majority of deals that we look at will follow the same questions, the better recognition that you spoke before around. Of course, they need to be much more aware of these disruptions. It's even more brutal. It's more binary. It's more capital is required because of the higher competition into these deals. But ultimately, it's the same. But there is an ever increasing part of our business, which formerly was called deep tech, or is still called deep tech, that where different kind of metrics, different kind of perspectives are needed.
Can I ask you then, Oliver, and this is just, super outside in thinking, have you then very much utilized Rick and his team across across the firm now, in the sense that, so you're you're shaking your head, so no, because my question is just to finish in case anyone didn't fully understand what I meant. What I meant was, is deep tech still considered a vertical within SpeedInvest, and only so, or do you, to a higher degree now, have Rick and his team help out with these much more foundational / heavy deep tech similar type deals that are popping up in other spaces now because of AI being the foundational technology, even in what would normally have been a pure B2B SaaS play?
A great question. it's very dangerous to so to say misuse the resources of Rick and his team for these kind of deep questions. So you don't want to do that. Of course, I would argue, let's take maybe health. Yeah, I would argue while the vast majority of health deals that we look at, or tech bio deals that we look at, have a massive AI component, only very few would fall into the deep tech category. And so for those few, of course, then it's a joint collaboration and joint investment between these two teams, and then Rick is highly involved. But the vast majority is ultimately where the core of the investment hypothesis is not built around AI, but built around the deep understanding of the founding team with the problem that they are solving, using AI, using whatever they need to solve it. So, so in that sense, we need to be very protective of this group and really focus them on those few cases where these specific perspectives are required, and not mix it too much.
So for this, I have kind of a challenging question, because I think, I think in a way you're right in how you think about usage of time of people. But I'm just curious, many of the verticals are going to be disrupted, including writing software code, automation, and even healthcare. Even what was already automated in healthcare will be now disrupted with AI. And I give you one example. We are receiving a large amount of these integration plays, API integration play, because we are focusing on this data infrastructure stack. And I would argue, maybe not today, but in a few years' time, 2-3 years, we will have a platform that actually automates all the software writing and integration. You just give whatever code application API into the generative AI tool, and it produces a perfect interface. So you can create a plugin very easily. So the need for integration, large integrators, will be gone. And you ask questions about, let's say, MuleSoft and the likes. What are they going to do? I'm just, it's just a hypothesis. But then, when you look even at plain vanilla B2B SaaS, I would argue, if you don't have this kind of view on what's coming in 5 to 10 years, can you actually make a reasonable investment that won't be disrupted in the next 5 to 10 years?
100%. That's why we need to have extremely fruitful and deep discussions in our partnership, where Rick fights and discusses, and with our health team, with our SaaS team, and this argument is super helpful. And we actually try to have it more, because it's easy to stay in your silo. So in that sense, you're right. On the individual cases, at least so far, it's relatively straightforward. It feels, it's never straightforward, relatively straightforward to separate out the cases where the path to commercialization is relatively fast. It's relatively, maybe not there yet, but relatively fast. And you still need to think about the next 5 years, of course. And that's what good SaaS investors will do, and will have a dialogue. But it's still ultimately a commercial pattern recognition. It's about execution. It's about go-to-market. It's about, of course, building a super efficient product. While in deep tech, it's so different, as you said, and it stays different for a long time. We're actually having the biggest issues in the later rounds, where even if you're raising Series B and you still have no revenue, right, and you still have no full product proof yet, and then there goes 10, 20, 30 million, and we need to do a pro rata of like 5 million. That's where we have tension in the company, because at least at that point we all think, okay, that's really something that's used to it. Early stage, it's fairly easy.
Yeah, that's the thing with deep tech. It's very easy to write the first check. The second check is pretty difficult, and then it only gets more difficult from there.
Exactly. And Europe needs more investors that have a growth, that can do growth investments at that stage and feel comfortable doing it. I think there's a real gap in the market here.
And I think, Oliver, thank you for saying this, because I do agree with the same. We need more growth stage VCs in Europe backing those fundamental cutting edge technologies in order to be able to build. Because even if we're investing at early stage, and Oliver, I'm sure your deep tech team is investing in great opportunities, but then if we don't have capital in Europe, the only way we can do it is going to the US. And then there are a lot of, specifically in those topics, there are a lot of geopolitical issues involved, and this and that. And sometimes they're still super early, so they need local support. So I'm talking growth, Series B or onwards, is still early stage. They need local support and local understanding and local help. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity, actually great gap in the market to build a growth fund.
So we've gone for a long time and we only have a little time left. So I'm going to go directly to one question that I think everyone should be very curious to hear from you the answer to. And that is, where do you think that the biggest disruption opportunities are for founders building in AI today? Are you like just going to invest in the best opportunities that come by? Or do you think more thesis driven? And this is where we're going to actively pursue someone building?
I mean, I can take a quick stab at it. So you already know our structure. So we don't have one thesis. Actually, we ask each team to come up with a thesis. So there's a very specific thesis in our health team, where there's a lot of opportunity, of course, on the intersection of AI and drug development, new approaches to tech, biotech. So there is tons of work to be done. There's also tons of work to be done in the health sector around efficiencies and cost reductions. This is a sector that needs productivity increases urgently, and the AI will play a big role here. So these are probably the two areas where we see in our health team. And we can probably go through every single sector and come up with specific opportunities in each of them. I would really not discount the consumer and content space. I think this is an immediate one. Creativity. I mean, we have an investment in Kittel, which is kind of the next generation Canva. They wouldn't be out there without AI. I mean, they're one of the big reasons why they're so successful is the very early adopter approach to AI that they've been executing against. So yes, and as said, for us at least, foundational models not so much, but deep tech investments in AI in these specific niche topics that can still become huge because AI will become huge. That's where our deep tech team is focused on.
I think, very much agree with Oliver, but I will structure this as maybe 3 topics. One topic is vertical AI, and I think I'm a big fan of what is happening now in protein design with AI. It's kind of a new topic, and I think AI promises us to help us to solve some of the biggest issues that we cannot solve, like in cost of healthcare and so on, but actually discovering new ways of producing drugs or finding drugs with much less cost involved, and finding much better suitable drugs for certain people. I think this is where AI is unbeatable. And to be honest, a lot of large tech players like Google investing in AlphaFold and so on, it's already there. But there are also small teams out of Cambridge and Oxford, for instance, in the UK, working on the topics, and they have some very interesting breakthrough ideas. So I think this is one place where I would be looking very, very hard to find the team to back, to be honest, because I think it's also it's not only just creating value, but I just myself believe that it's really where we should put as venture capital our money to work. So if we have a chance. And the same goes maybe to the hardest resource management problems where we are running into an issue of compute power. It's also vertical AI where we can actually look at solutions to optimize energy and water usage, whether it's for data centers or generally, because we are running as a society, as a human beings, we run into a problem. We don't have enough water, we don't have enough energy, and how do we solve? And not enough food these days, right? And this is kind of a nexus of 3 things. They are all dependent. So we need to find, and AI is great in optimization. So AI can optimize resources in a way no human being can. So I think this is a huge promise, and I will be really, really betting on those. The 2 other domains is basically still in there. What I have mentioned before is basically that the whole tooling is missing, whether working with data or, creating new models. It's still kind of, it's very hard. So anyone who makes it very easy to use, I think I would be just putting money immediately. So anyone who comes and says enterprise, you just press the button and you have your model with your data cleaned up, ready, and you can use it. I think I would be betting on these teams. Last but not least is safety of AI, because as the more AI is exploding, the more is the question, is it ethical? How do we use it? What data goes in? What data comes out? What is true? What is not true? And yes, we can invest in tooling to monitor how it's used and monitor. And I think this is one aspect. The other aspect is data itself, accessibility of data, and do we trust the data we are training the models on? So I think these are the three big buckets that as a human being, I really want to help. Whoever tries to solve these issues, I want to help them. And if I have capital to do so, even more so.
Maybe one aspect here that we internally discuss quite a bit, I would call it almost a Trojan horse effect that we're seeing with AI these days. So if we take the biotech example, where we're also exactly excited about these new drug developments and these new opportunities to accelerate drug development massively. So that's super exciting. So you enter in as an AI investor or as a software investor. A few years later, you come out as a biotech investor, because a lot of them will actually not end up building a platform, but they will end up developing drugs. And then that's, of course, a totally different game. And the same thing could be said about material sciences, right? There's so much opportunity with AI and new materials that are being developed and then being researched, and so on. So what I foresee is that a lot of us really have to get out of our comfort zone, and probably if we take this whole phenomenon of AI seriously, we will go into the physical world and have to also do different types of investments, and that's quite exciting, but it's a bit scary.
And I totally agree. And I think this is one of the things I was trying to actually articulate today, but that we are like a software, many VCs in Europe would say we invest in software, but the question is, can you continue doing this and building like futuristic companies, just restricting yourself to software? Because the worlds are increasingly connected.
You're completely right there. And we had, I was with Rick in Denmark for a conference on robotics, or an unconference actually, because we were a very small group, but people really knee deep in robotics. And that was exactly the conclusion, that you cannot, the next step, the next frontier is really bringing software to the real world. Katja, Oliver, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. I always truly enjoy speaking to both a powerful generalist, but at the same time also a specialist, so you get both perspectives. I think it's the most interesting conversations we can have around AI today is seeing how the two different types of VCs will think about one space. So thanks so much for joining for this.
Thank you, Andreas. It was a great conversation. Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you as well. It was a great day.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.